Welcome to the FIG Festival, a graphic design festival which 2021 edition will take place online with different contributions ranging from podcasts to essays to videos and lectures. I'm very happy to introduce today's speaker, Bahia Shehab, who is a professor of design and founder of the graphic design program at the American University in Cairo. Her work has been exhibited in museums, galleries, and streets around the world. She has received a number of international recognitions and awards, which include the BBC 100 Women List, a TED Senior Fellowship, a Bellagio Fellowship, and a Prince Claus Award. She is the first Arab woman to receive the UNESCO-Sharjah Prize for Arab Culture. Shehab holds a PhD from Leiden University in the Netherlands and is the founding director of TypeLab at AUC. Her publications include You Can Crush the Flowers, a visual memoir of the Egyptian Revolution, 2021, At the Corner of a Dream, 2019, 1,000 Times No, 2010, and the co-authored our award-winning book, A History of Arab Graphic Design, 2020. Today, Bahia will speak about writing as form of resistance, books as living archives, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So Bahia, welcome and thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and your contribution, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you for the kind invitation and for the theme, because I feel like we take books for granted. We've had them around for such a long time that now they've become a very common commodity. They're a tool for communication for us. They're a tool for us to transfer ideas, but we never really look at books actually as archives. And this is part of what I want to present today, is how I'm using books literally as archives. I will start with the latest book I published, You Can Crush the Flowers. And this was published for the 10-year anniversary of the Egyptian Revolution. It was a difficult decision for me to make, especially in the current conditions, to go ahead and publish such a book. But I think after you listen to the journey, you will understand why this book came about. So I want to play this video. It's a video of a mosque in Syria and Daraa. It's of a minaret falling, being destroyed, and I saw this in 2013. And unfortunately, it brought back all the trauma of my childhood, of having grown up in the civil war, and me seeing these images coming out of Syria. The loss of life was unbearable. It's really till today, the human condition of what is going on in Syria is very painful to witness. But to me, the loss of the cultural heritage and the monuments that were being destroyed and are being destroyed every day was very painful to witness. This is an example of the mosque that I wanted to share with you. But the most painful one was this Umayyad mosque in Aleppo that was destroyed in 2013. And these are two pictures that show you the difference of this minaret. And to me, this minaret, everything was painful, but this minaret specifically was more painful to see being destroyed. On one hand, you have your heritage being physically destroyed in your country and or your region, and on the other hand, you have your culture being blocked in other nations around the world for different agendas. But then you feel like you're stuck in the middle, like where on both fronts, you have no platforms to communicate about your culture, about your identity. So this minaret that was destroyed, it was described by Yasser Tabah, who's a brilliant historian, as a continuation of ancient Syrian churches and entirely localized phenomenon centered mainly in the region between Aleppo and Edessa. So Ernst Herzfeld mentioned that the architectural style of the Aleppo minaret is a product of Mediterranean civilization. So this culture is not only ours, it's for the whole world, it's for everybody, it's for humanity at large. And it's being lost and misinterpreted in different parts of the world for different reasons. And as intellectuals, artists, historians, academics living in this part of the world, we are seeing the loss of our heritage firsthand. We are witnessing this and we feel responsible. At least I do. To me, this minaret, I'm using these photos and this minaret as an example because the writing on that minaret, I'm interested in epigraphy and I'm fascinated by Arabic calligraphy. It's something I've been studying for years and I know I will be studying for the rest of my life. And my dream was to go see this minaret. And I lived in Lebanon for years and I always thought, oh, it's so close by. One day I will. Now living in Cairo, seeing that minaret destroyed, I feel the loss. I will never see it in my lifetime. I could have and I didn't. And this notion that your heritage can disappear in any minute is a very difficult notion to deal with. It's you have to come to terms that nothing is for granted. Even structures that have lived for hundreds and hundreds of years can be destroyed. It's a very unsettling feeling. I was invited at the Louisiana Museum in Denmark to reflect on in an exhibition in 2015 called Arab Contemporary, and I was invited to reflect on the state of cultural heritage in the Arab world today. And I thought I want to pay tribute to this minaret that I loved so much. So it was, I looked at minarets in general in all over the Islamic world, and I documented them, and I wanted to paint them, and I wanted to decode the meaning of what these structures are. I looked at the soundscape of Cairo. It's called the City of 1,000 Minarets, and I wanted to look at minarets and pay tribute to the Aleppo minaret. So I created this installation. And it was multi-layered. On one hand, I was looking at the heritage, but the sound installation was actually the voice of a woman, because to me, this loss of heritage, it was also time for me to call for the rise in the voice of the feminine. So I called upon a very young, beautiful mezzo-soprano performer who was training at the Cairo Opera House. Her name is May Kamel, and she recorded the call to prayer using her beautiful voice. So that was playing while this was painted on the wall, these 20 minarets. I painted these minarets on the wall, the sound was playing, but then I had to really explain why did I have these 20 minarets? What were my choices? And I wanted to place them from the smallest that I found to the largest that I found. So on the wall, as you're walking along this curved wall, you start seeing a tiny minaret, and these are all painted to size, so their size is relevant to each other. So as you're walking by these tiny minarets, the minarets start growing, and then you start seeing taller and taller structures. And here in the middle is where the Aleppo minaret falls, and it's destroyed. It's just the outline of it is painted. You wouldn't notice at first, but it's only the black structure, the stub that remains of the minaret is painted. And then when you look at it closely and you decode it, you discover that the red ones are actually built in Africa, the yellow ones are built in the Arabian Gulf, and the green ones are built in what we call now the Middle East or West Asia. So to me, this placement, just decoding the geography of where they are, you see the yellow on the orange and the green, and then you start grasping the geography. I also looked at the countries, whether they're a democracy or not. What kind of rule is in that country where this specific minaret is built. And then you see another layer of power and historic representation, the countries and the kind of rule in these countries. And then I also looked at the time when these minarets were built. So you get a notion of progression, and you discover that the earliest ones are maybe in the poorest countries. They're the smallest ones. The tallest ones are in more advanced, now developed, richer nations. Thus, they have the ability to build the taller. So what might seem as a black and white structures that are laid out simply on a wall have so much history in them, and have so many stories to tell, and have so many socio-economic implications to transmit. But it will depend on the viewer, because if you don't know all this data, then all you see is just black and white minarets on a wall. And this is the role of the visitor in a gallery, and their memory and their background and their reflection. So I wanted to start with this project because, to me, it is just to demonstrate the difference between what everybody sees and what really is, and how we look at things differently, and the importance of archives, because archives are part of that, are part of this creation of the collective narrative, that we look at things maybe in a closer way, and that the way we look at things is not so bipolar or so separated from our different realities. So in 2010, I was invited at the Haus der Kunst in Munich to create a reflection on 100 years of Islamic art in Europe. And at the time I was thinking, I don't know what to say. My audience doesn't speak Arabic. The curator said the artwork needs to be in Arabic. And I thought, okay, if I'm using the Arabic script, I cannot use the poetry to translate. It will be lost in translation, whatever I put. And there's only one thing I want to say, actually. I want to say no. And to say no, you say no. In Arabic, we say no and 1,000 times no. So I looked on artifacts, on different objects that I could find the letter no, and I selected 1,000 no's, and I documented where they were from. Again, it's the same exercise as the minarets, where you take something out of its context, you simplify it, you represent it, and then you allow the viewer to create their own message and reflect their own feelings on the artwork. So this was on display in 2010. It was a plexiglass installation and a book documenting where each no is coming from. And then the revolution started, and a lot was unfolding. And for 9 months, I could not be an artist. I was documenting and trying to understand what was going on. But there came a moment when I really needed to take part of it. So I started using the no's that I had documented and bringing them back to life. So several of these no's started coming out as a reaction to what was going on the street. And I kept painting these no's over and over. This one is no to burning books, no to stripping the people. But then in 2013, all that narrative stopped. The walls were whitewashed. And for 2 years, I felt like there's nothing to say now. I was feeling like these white walls, I had nothing to communicate. But then I was invited to Freiburg in Germany again for an exhibition, and I decided to paint there. There are 12 legal walls in Freiburg that anybody can paint on whatever they want. So I thought maybe it's time that we create a new set of no's that are related to all of us, not just what was unfolding in Cairo. So no to extremism, no to racism, no to blood, no to war, no to borders, no to discrimination, no to hatred, no to killing, no to stupidity, no to colonialism, no to violence. And I started painting these no's as a way to heal and to come to terms with the dreams that we had and that were not realized. So I started painting these no's in different cities around the world, in Germany, in the US, in Turkey, in London, and in Beirut. But then there comes a time where you feel like saying no is not enough, and we need to continue the conversation. And for that, poetry comes to my aid. And I started reflecting on the poems of Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet of resistance. And the first poem I painted was a quick stencil in downtown Vancouver um, in February of 2016, and it read, "Stand at the corner of a dream and fight." And these poems I started painting them in different cities around the world. And this was painted in March of the same year in New York for the women political prisoners. And it reads, "I had a day that will come for the butterflies who are cocooned in prison." So every wall is a reflection on a condition that we are living or we are feeling. In Madison, we painted indoors because it was 0 degrees outdoors, and the message read, "No to the impossible." In Marrakesh was another poem. It reads, "We love life if we had access to it. نحن نحب الحياة إذا ما استطعنا إليها سبيلا." And communities started being created with every wall. Conversations started happening, connections with people, communities, and ideas started unfolding on walls. In Tokyo, I painted "On this earth, there are things worth living for," again by Mahmoud Darwish. And in Greece, after seeing all the people who were drowning at sea year after year, I painted a poem that reads, "Those who have no land have no sea." In Beirut, I painted "My country is not a suitcase," again on the condition of how we are displaced. But all the work can be erased. And this happened quite quickly for me in Beirut. The work got erased a few days later. But even the work can be erased because of the weather, because of the people, because of different things. And street art is a very ephemeral medium, and this is its beauty, is that it's not permanent. You cannot take it for granted, just like things in our life, just like structures in our life, just like institutions, countries, nations, our connection to our relatives who we might wake up and find them gone the next morning. So this wall was painted in the Netherlands in December of 2016, and it was a bit optimistic. It reads, "One day we will be who we want to be. The journey has not started and the road has not ended." And in Stavanger, I painted a beautiful poem about the revolution, but only the last two parts. The first two parts read, "How wide is the revolution? How narrow is the journey?" And then the letters that are big read, "How big is the idea?" And then in very small, "How small is the state?" Commenting on the difference between ideas and our borders, and how narrow our outlook is on life. In a way, in a sense. In Paris, I painted "I Will Dream." It's just one word on a corner. And in Hawaii, I was really struck by the fact that people in Hawaii were able to revive their language after colonization, and that there are young adults who have graduated from universities and are working and actually speak Hawaiian now, after their language was almost abolished. And I painted this poem that is on permanent display at Shangri-La, at the Museum of Shangri-La in Hawaii. It reads, "My people will return as air and light and water." So because of the nature of these walls and because of the ephemeral nature, the fact that they could disappear at any time, I decided to collect them in a book, because you can never see them all once. They are in different geographies. In a way, they are like us. We are in diasporas. We don't belong in our land. We even if you are in your land, You can be estranged because governments do not necessarily represent you as a human being, represent how your outlook on life or what you believe in. Um, so I felt like in the same way that I've put these nodes that have been dispersed historically, that have been separated because of geographies, because of mediums, because of um, colonization, twists and turns in history. And the same way that I've put these nodes together in a book, I wanted to put my walls together in a book. I wanted to bring them together in a small archive. Um, but the walls didn't stop even after the book was published, and communities were growing. And this was a wall we painted in Lincoln in the UK. Lincoln was one of the cities with the highest vote for Brexit. And we wanted to leave a message there. And the brilliant curator invited the Muslim women of Lincoln, the YMCA, and the students at Lincoln University to participate. And the module that was created by creating childcare for the mothers who want to come with their children, by creating workshops and creating activities that are collateral to the wall. So volunteers would come to the wall, they would have a place to learn a bit about Arabic calligraphy, they can listen to poetry. So this module kept on developing, and in Lincoln we painted, "We will not repent our dreams, no matter how often they break." So it was a reflection on dreaming and linking it to sin, and saying that it's a sin we will not repent. So it's always the people, it's the community that we bring together on the walls. It's really not just, yes, of course, I try to explore new forms, beautiful forms on how we can reinvent the shape of the Arabic script. As a designer, this is also one of my obsessions. But what's more important than the poetry, the artwork, the different cities, in the different cities is the communities and the people that you bring together around the walls and around the message and the conversations that they can have. And the walls become a medium for connection and not just an artwork. And this is the real value. In Belgium, we painted "All the Hearts of the People Are My Identity, Release Me of My Passport." And this is at FAMUS in Antwerp. And it was really one of the most beautiful experiences in my life, because the wall turned, we had a kitchen soup, we had people from all classes, all backgrounds stop by, visit the wall, and contribute in different ways. We had people take photos, hold photography exhibition. We have a dancer reflect on the poem, which is, it reads, that poem was sung, so she took the song, turned it into a dance, and they performed the dance. So it was really a beautiful experience altogether. Which brings me to the last book I will talk about today, which is the History of Arab Graphic Design book, and the journey that it took to create that project. So in my art practice, with the walls that are connecting communities and the books that are trying to preserve these connections or these travels, the 10 years of the revolution book at the corner, at the You Can Crush the Flowers, that book was came after At the Corner of a Dream, which was actually, At the Corner of a Dream was my exit from Cairo and the different walls that I painted around the world to deal with that fact. And documenting those led to the urgency of documenting what happened 10 years ago, because there is a consistent erasure of memory. And these books become the archives or the containers of this knowledge in the lack of institutions who can play that role, actually. So a history of Arab graphic design was an endeavor of 4 years between me and another scholar and a team of researchers. We were very lucky to be funded by the AUC, the American University in Cairo, in a research grant to support the work. So we documented over 80 designers from Morocco to Iraq. It's the first book on the topic. Um, and before we published the book, by the time we started the research and until the book came out, around 8 designers who we've interviewed and documented had passed away out of the 80. So it felt more urgent, this need to document their stories and pass the knowledge on to the next generation of scholars, designers, educators, historians who are interested in the stories, because design is very much linked to our everyday life. It's almost invisible that we take it for granted, and we're still trying to create awareness about it in the Arab world. Some people don't even know what graphic design is or what design does. So the design program that I founded almost 10 years ago at the American University in Cairo, this was one of the courses that I conceived back then. And it took almost 10 years for us to be able to turn it into a book. And it took a team effort. It took a different a scholar collaborating and a team of people collaborating, but eventually it came about, and the reaction has been really overwhelming with the international design community. I think it was about time for it to come. I don't know if we will ever be able to create a museum for Arab graphic design, but at least I know that the first step is there, and maybe we are planting all of these books, these mini archives that we are creating. I think these could be the stepping stones or the seeds for other trees to grow. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bahia. Yeah, it was really amazing to hear about all the path you went through between the books and the projects, and really this idea of books or maybe projects as well as seeds for future things that will grow is really, yeah, I find it very important, and bringing a lot of hope somehow in a complicated world we are in. I wanted to know just a bit more about the process of making this last book. You were talking about a team, and I find it also very interesting that you link it somehow both to your personal projects, in which you realize that a lot of things are disappearing without leaving sometimes long-lasting traces, maybe, let's say it like that. And at the same time, it's also related to the design class that you also created, if I understood right. So there is a strong link as well with pedagogy and with transmission, of course. So yeah, I was wondering about, you talked about a team. Did you also involve students or designers in the making of the book? Because sometimes there's also this expectation that archives or histories are made by a legitimated person, while I think also in these questions of urgencies of documenting, it's also important to understand that actually everyone can start archiving things from their grandparents or from things that they just get from the street. I also appreciated that you took us on a journey on walls and public space. So yeah, all these questions. If it echoes something that you would like to share, I would love to hear it.
Yes, I think there are, I mean, just the way we learn differently, there are different ways to preserve, and oral histories is one important tool, is talking to the older generation and documenting their oral history, at least so that we have a part of their knowledge. books are another, archives are a third. And I think you need all of these tools to really pass on the knowledge properly. You know, you need to talk to your elders, you need to listen to their stories, you need to look at things through their perspective, because as historians, I mean, I was before I worked with a team on the project of a history of Arab graphic design. I was more working with material culture. I was documenting epigraphy and working with Islamic art. So there are no live people for you to talk to. You have to, the object has to tell a story, and it's up to you to read more and understand the story. When you're talking with a living history, everything can tell you a story. I mean, and now we're lucky, there's multiplicity of mediums. You might find a written interview with an artist from the 1960s, and that could serve as a document. Or you could find a recording also on YouTube from the 80s with one designer that you come across. So I feel like there's a treasure that is everywhere that anybody can access. It doesn't matter whether you're a historian or not. Now I'm getting messages from beautiful designers who are living in different parts of the world who are saying, oh, my grandfather was a calligrapher and I want to write a book about them. I want to honor their memory. How do we go about doing that? So I think what we hoped for the book is that it becomes just a push for others, is already being materialized much sooner than I thought it would. And I feel very lucky and blessed to be part of that team who is really pushing others to document their stories, so anybody can preserve history. Students, historians, family members. I mean, it's up to all of us, because I see the scale of the loss, and I think we need armies of historians to preserve part of the stories that were lost.